Hi, I'm Tigran, a founder and creator of TreeScale platform and open source tools around it. Today I'm introducing a TreeScale platform, which is a game-changing, cutting-edge solution reshaping how we integrate AI models into our existing software solutions. So what is TreeScale? TreeScale is a platform specifically designed to take your AI models and transform them into robust, easy-to-use REST APIs. It streamlines the complex and costly process of integrating AI into your software by managing the infrastructure and taking the deployed AI models accessible via simple, easy-to-use REST APIs that could be integrated directly to your web application or mobile application, depending on your specific use cases. With TreeScale, deploying AI becomes less about dealing technical intricacies and more about pure creating impactful AI application. It's a cost-efficient and effective solution that effortlessly makes an AI integration process. So if you want to scale your AI operations without a fuss, TreeScale might be the solution that you have been looking for. Today we're going to build a simple web application using Next.js and TreeScale that essentially will list all of the popular touristic places for a given city or a country, depending on where people want to visit if they need to. So stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe. To get started with TreeScale app, you have to first create an account at treescale.com or sign in. If you already have an account, I'm gonna use my GitHub to sign in to TreeScale platform. And first of all, when you sign in, you don't have any apps. Essentially, you have to make one. For our specific use case, because we are building a travel companion app, let's name this as travel. The app name is going to be used as a subdomain for making REST API calls. So this app name is pretty important, and changing the app name will result of getting 404 errors if you already have somewhere in your application integrated TreeScale app. So by default, TreeScale platform assigns default AI platform, AI provider, OpenAI, and the default model is GPT-3.5 because we saw in numerous configurations that this is the best thing to get started with. But of course, depending on your use case, you might want to choose other models or even other providers that we support, or even self-hosted ones that we have from open source versions. For the production use cases, you have to provide the provider API key, which is essentially an OpenAI API key to get started in production, because in development you essentially have a very limited rate limit. Essentially, it's right now 2 API calls for 30 seconds, which is of course not a production use case, but for development and for basic testing, that's quite enough. For API routes, we have to configure now places API, which essentially going to be named by the logical places. And this places API should contain a prompt which is defining the list of the top touristic places in given city or country that we want to get. I have already pre-populated some prompt that we can use right away, which essentially tells the OpenAI model to respond with the touristic destinations for the given country or city. And the important fact is that it will try to return a Google Map links and the place names as a list. And the most important error handling for this type of prompts will be to return an error message if the given name of the place is not a city or a country. So it will just check whether it knows the name of that city or a country. If not, then it will just return the error that we have given by default. So after saving and publishing our application, see, we have already published it. We can now have a basic debugger test, which is available directly in our platform. This is a helpful interface to get started and see whether your app actually works or not. So for that case, we have to kind of provide now the name of the place. So we can type either a country or a city. Let's try France, for example, which is, I believe, should have more than 10 touristic places to visit. But let's see what kind of result we will get from OpenAI model. Usually those requests are taking from 5 to 10 seconds, depending on specific overload for the OpenAI models. But here you can see the top one, of course, it's Eiffel Tower in Paris, and we got back Google Map links, of course, with it. So this API response pretty much sufficient for what we want to do in general. And we also have this tab which says like code samples. So we have a code samples to make API requests, and we can just copy over with the existing parameters, even for not doing that much of a coding, because the integration is that simple. So we have this simple web application built with Next.js and TypeScript. That is essentially a base setup of create next application without that much of a tweaking, where we have this handle submit function, which essentially triggers when we type something here and try to gather recommendations. And this text array input is designed to contain a response coming from the TreeScale application. So this covers the entire workflow, and the missing part is just the piece of code that we have from TreeScale as a code example here. So we can just freely copy and move that request code here. This essentially gives us a full request with all necessary parameters, even with the token, secret token for the authorization for our travel application. So this secret token, of course, is not something that you want to commit to your code base or even publish to your production UI application. But for the matter of this basic example, we will just keep it this simple and try to make a simple API request to see how it works. But of course, for the production use cases, you have to hide these API requests down the line of your API. And of course, you have to have some sorts of authentication to validate whether requests should be made by this user or not. For some cases down the line, we have plans to make a cookie-based authentication that will allow you to freely publish your TreeScale application directly to your frontend without having any backend. We have just missing one piece to finally test this part, is to set the proper variables here. We have a place name state variable that essentially changes when we have this input on change event. And we also have the response text that should be set whenever we get back a proper response from TreeScale application. So essentially we have to do set response, and when we get back a response, it essentially contains a result field. So let's set the result field as well to get back a clean text. So this is the final result, what we have here with the request and the result that we set to our read-only text array as a value field that will display an actual response from our request. So let's try this out and let's refresh and type, let's say Berlin, to get back some responses. See, we sent API request already, and if we see a payload, we have actually a place Berlin, and we already get back a response with all the touristic places that OpenAI model thinks that's the best places to visit in Berlin. And usually those like Google Maps links, those will be outdated or not working. So don't worry that much about it. This is just a test. And to make this like with up-to-date data, of course, you will need a vector database to feed in your data or use some external agents like Wikipedia agent or like an actual Google search that we provide as a separate extensions for your TreeScale application. So one thing to make this kind of a bit more pretty, during the request time, we have to essentially display some loading indication. So we can do the loading indication Boolean state that will work to get back an actual visible state where we set like if the request still going on, we will just display a loading text to kind of indicate that the request still going on. So for that, let's just display a loading indication somewhere at the bottom of input. If it's loading, let's set the loading indication here. So let's try again with another city. Let's say Stockholm. Now we got a loading indication, and whenever the response comes, we saw already, we can just fill it in the text array. That's pretty much it for today. That was a very simple web application. As you saw, that fetches the top places from OpenAI model. But the cool part is that you have all the flexibility of tweaking a prompt, adding more templates to existing prompt, and adding extensions or attaching separate databases, all that without writing a single line of code and just using a REST API endpoint for that. There are more tutorials that are coming up, so stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe.